When you're told the voice recognition system always works, you maliciously comply. We'll get into that in a bit, but first, you asked me for all my change, so I complied. In the end, I remained the fool. In 2003, I returned home from my first year of college. I decided to switch schools and degrees and attend a local music technical college instead. I moved back into my parents' home and drove into the city each day for classes. In order to save on parking, I purchased a permit to park in a church's lot. This lot was about 10 blocks from the school, so I had a decent walk each way. About a week into classes, I was on my walk smoking a cigarette when out of nowhere a homeless man appears right next to me. He looks, as you might imagine, late 50s, messy salt and pepper hair, flannel jacket, snow pants, work boots with no laces. He leaned in and asked, "Hey buddy, can I get a smoke?" Now, I was 19 at the time and a bit cocky. I was gonna give him one, but he had to work for it. I told him he could have one, but he would have to walk with me to class and keep me company while he smoked it. He agreed and off we went. We exchanged names and asked each other basic questions about our lives, the normal pleasantries. About a block from school, we tossed our butts and he leans in again and says, "Hey buddy, I gotta ask, got any spare change?" I replied, "Sorry, but I don't keep change on me." At the time, I tossed all my spare change in some glass milk jugs I had in my room. So we parted ways that day. I kid you not, 2 weeks later, this man had memorized my class schedule. Every single day, this man would meet me at the corner, ask for a smoke, and walk me to class. Every day, asking me for change, and me having none. This continued for almost 15 months. The school I went to didn't have summer breaks, so now it's just a few weeks away from graduation. It's the end of winter. I'm getting ready in the morning for class. I put on my leather trench coat, grab my book bag, and head for the door. I look down at the floor and see 2 glass milk jugs overflowing with change. I look down at the huge pockets in my coat, then back at the change jars. I'm gonna do it. I take each milk jar and turn them upside down into each pocket. You have no idea how much 2 gallons of change actually weighs. Then I head off for school. Things start off like normal. He meets me at the corner. I give him a smoke. We set off. I'm trying my best to step lightly as to not make my pockets jingle, and I can't look him in the face because I don't want to totally lose it. We finally get to the end of our walk. We tossed our cigarettes. He turned to me and said, "Hey buddy, I gotta ask, you got any change?" So I turn to him and say, "Okay, I'm gonna make you a deal. I will give you all the change I have in my pockets if you promise to never ask me for change again. Deal?" He nods his head in agreement and holds out his one hand, palm up. "No, you don't understand," I said. "I have a lot of change." So he holds out both hands, cupping them together. "No," I said, "you don't understand. I have a lot of change." He stands there with a questioning look on his face, so I grab the bottom of his sweatshirt and pull it up and make him hold it like a hammock. I then proceed to start shoveling handfuls of change into his sweatshirt. Handful after handful, and his eyes are getting wider in sheer disbelief. Just when he thinks I'm about finished, I switch to the other pocket. More and more change. Its sound is echoing between the buildings and both of us are laughing uncontrollably. I finally finished. He thanked me and waddled off like a pregnant woman, and I went to class. The next day was bright and sunny. I parked my car at the church. I'm walking, big smile on my face. He meets me at the corner, also with a big smile on his face. He leans in with a huge grin and says, "Hey buddy, can I get a smoke?" Long pause. "Yeah buddy, you can have a smoke." I didn't expect right off the rip to have such a wholesome compliance story pop up here. In fact, it got to the point where OP was like, basically saying that they made this homeless man jump through hoops or play games to get a smoke or change. And I thought it was gonna go in a much darker direction, not actually like a story you read that actually kind of warms your heart. Live and Love Llamas left a comment saying, "He promised not to ask you for change, not smokes." I bet you were a bright spot in his day. Someone who would acknowledge him, walk with him a bit, shoot the breeze maybe. Also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you guys enjoy awesome stories of malicious compliance, why not hit those like and subscribe buttons down below? Our next story is, you want me to escalate a claim? Sure. I used to work on the retentions department of an ISP back in the day. While many people called genuinely wanting to cancel their phone service, just as many knew that retentions was more than that. The ISP, let's call them Red Phone, has two different departments. I worked on Retentions 1, where we did a lot of fixing bills and offering small discounts and slightly cheaper phones to customers who said they wanted to leave. Retentions 2 was for customers who were in the process of porting their numbers, and the worst thing they offered was a 50% discount for a couple of years with a decent phone for free. This happened roughly 10, maybe 12 years ago when roaming was straight up highway robbery. Let me introduce you to the executive. I got the call, I did my little introductory spiel, and I immediately discovered this guy was the most entitled POS I'd ever had the displeasure to speak to. He said he was a very important executive who traveled a lot for work, but the bill he got was ridiculous and I had to solve it or he was going to cancel his service. I muted him, so he heard nothing, but I could still hear what he said, and while I checked his account, I could hear him gloat to his girlfriend that he's getting the bill credited because he knows how to play the system. And he was a jerk, but he wasn't wrong. This guy was a pro at playing Red Phone. He had the highest phone plan the company offered, which was around €90 at the time for one line, but paid €30 per month because he had discounts from both departments stacked on top of each other. His plan allowed him to get what at the time was a super expensive phone for basically nothing at Retentions 2. He had gotten the super shiny customer status and the super shiny customer service line, which usually meant a customer was averaging a €300 monthly bill, despite his €30 ARPU because he complained about how the delocalized customer service sucked. He was also not wrong about his bill being ridiculous. He had visited several EU countries, got a €600 bill, called customer service, and said he had not known that roaming was so expensive. No one had warned him when he told us he was traveling overseas. The company had a policy that the first time a customer complained about something, we could refund them, particularly if the complaint was that the customer had not been informed about extra charges. So the rep informed him about roaming costs and refunded him all of the roaming charges, leaving the bill at €30. Second month comes around. He keeps using the phone overseas, got a €1,500 bill. He calls customer service. They tell him that they can't refund him again. He says he wants to cancel his account then and gets transferred to me. He was demanding that we credited his roaming charges again because if we can do it once, we can do it again. And also because the roaming prices were abusive. He did have a point there. I told him I couldn't do that, so he wanted me to open a claim and escalate it. I refused again because there was no one to escalate to. He wasn't going to get that credited. He insisted he wasn't hanging up until I escalated the issue because he wasn't informed, and if I kept the call going for much longer, he was going to charge the company for his time because he was a busy man. At this point, I'd been working there long enough that if you were nice or even normal, I would try my darndest to help you. But if you were a jerk, sorry, can't do, get lost. Customer refuses to hang up, I can hang up. This guy though, he had gone past being a jerk into a total runt waffle and I was ticked off. I couldn't be a jerk back, but he'd been freaking around and I could make sure he found out. So I told him that okay, since he was so insistent, I would open a claim to refund him the €1,500 bill and muted him while I opened the claim. The jerk was again gloating at his girlfriend about how clever he was because he was going to get this bill refunded too. Meanwhile, I was copy-pasting the notes from the previous month's claim where the rep had written, "I've informed customer of roaming charges in all the countries he told me he could be visiting," list of European countries. Also, stacking discounts? Very much not a thing. He had to spam the Retentions 1 call centers with calls until he got a newbie lost enough to apply another discount over his Retentions 2 discount. And he had not read the terms and conditions of the accounts, but I had. Trying to defraud the company was grounds for service termination. I got the claim number, flagged down my supervisor, and told her to please send it to headquarters in the daily report so fraud could examine the account. I told the guy that the claim had been opened, but also that since it was obvious he was trying to abuse the company's policies, the claim had been flagged to be reviewed by fraud, and it was likely that his account would be terminated. He went from entitled to worried in 2 seconds and asked me to close the claim. Sorry, dude, can't do. You wanted a claim open. Now it's open. Yes, the customer was fired. What I don't fault this guy for is playing the retentions phone line game, because that's kind of what you have to do for some bills to get like a promo applied. Obviously, where they screwed up here was getting a $1,500 bill knowingly and then expecting them to just write it off. Really makes me glad that we don't still live in the days where most places had data caps on everything that were ridiculous. I remember when I first really started using a smartphone in like the mid-2010s, and it was like a 1 or 2 gigabyte data cap. Using that phone just during downtimes, breaks, before and after school, during technical college. I mean, it was easy to use that month's data cap of 1 or 2 gigabyte in like a week, if that. And Cora Impara left a comment saying, I was moving from the US to Europe and called to cancel my satellite TV service. They were impossible. What can we do to keep you as a customer? They kept asking. Move your satellites and service to cover France, I would answer. Because seriously, I was moving to France. That went on for ages before they finally realized they were not going to keep me as a customer. Not because I wanted a discount, but because I was genuinely moving to Europe. It was one of the dumbest conversations I've ever had. Our next story is, you want me to answer what you expect to hear? Okay. Back in my days working for a Big 5 consulting company, we were mandated to attend several courses. The one that relates to the story was called Corporate Image and was about looking the part, being well dressed and such. Being that the company had a strictly suit policy, the idea of the course was kind of an indoctrination to the Barney Stinson's school of dressing. I was having a particularly rough day that day, so we could say that my attitude towards the course wasn't the best, and I sat in the back. The guy in charge, let's call him Corpo, starts the course by showing a video of a guy wearing flip-flops, bathing suit, t-shirt with surfer logos, badly trimmed beard and ponytail, explaining some technical stuff in the most boring way, stuttering and showcasing a poor knowledge of the subject. After the video finishes, Corpo asks if we think that the guy is a good communicator and that the message got through. Everybody says no. Corpo asks why. People start saying that he doesn't look the part. Then Corpo asks me. I reply, because he's boring as a white wall and doesn't know the subject well enough. Corpo doubles down. Don't you think the way he's dressed has something to do with it? I say, if he's good enough, knows his stuff and communicates well, he could be fully naked for all I care. Everybody laughs, except Corpo. Corpo starts a full 15-minute rant about how looking the part, how wearing a suit is the most important thing because it makes someone believable and trustworthy and blah blah blah. I interrupt him once to say, lawyers are among the most untrustworthy people on earth, and they all wear suits. He continues his rant by saying that nobody would trust a lawyer without a suit, and blah blah blah. Okay, so this is how we roll. Suits are the most important thing, and this is how you expect us to reply. Fine, I will comply. Fast forward to later in the course, he shows footage of Steve Jobs and Steve Ballmer talking, engaging with the audience and being generally well regarded as good spokespersons while wearing their typical outfits, which, guess what, are not suits. When the QA about the Steve's videos start, I say, they don't look trustworthy. 2 of the top 20 rich people in the world and they wear something that I can buy for like $40 at any shopping mall? Where are the suits? Corpo by then is kind of furious with me, but I've managed to engage the rest of my colleagues into my side of the equation. So we start arguing who's more trustworthy and if the brand of suit goes directly proportional to the trustworthiness of the guy. Examples go from Pat Riley with his Armani suits to Don Corleone with his tailor-made ones. Corpo had lost the class and everything ends prematurely when someone asks, wait, are military suits trustworthy or not? Corpo gasps thinking about where the conversation could be heading and dismisses us ahead of schedule with a, okay, you've all passed this course, I think we'll end it here. lest we allow the conversation to turn towards something like gauging the trustworthiness of somebody from the DPRK based on their military suit attire. What about a colorful vest or a pocket square? What does that say about their trustworthiness? Squirreltail left a comment saying, 47th rule of acquisition, don't trust a man wearing a better suit than your own. Our next story is, get a better job offer? Fine. Worked at company A for over 8 years, to the point I had no intentions of going anywhere else and plan to retire with them in around 30 years, as long as they kept treating me fair. Reviews came up and everyone in my team was given a lackluster raise, even though we had improved the program from years behind on contracts to delivering 2 months ahead. I had taken on tasks that should have been distributed across multiple engineers, but they didn't want to pay extra engineers, so they became my tasks instead. After the raises were dished out, my team confronted our manager and told him how disappointed we were. His response was, get a better job offer and we'll discuss things. So I did just that. I found a better job at a smaller company where I would get a 20% raise and less responsibility. Once I had my offer letter, I turned it in along with a month notice of my resignation. Manager wanted to discuss what it would take to keep me. I met with him with a list of all of my accomplishments, which he already had from review time, and told him I believe a better raise was justified. I told him 2 months ago that that's what it would have taken to keep me. Today, you have to beat this offer of a 20% raise and less responsibilities. He told me he couldn't get anywhere close to that. I should have told him that I wasn't satisfied, etc. He then went through my list of accomplishments and stated how half of them weren't required for my position. Cue compliance number 2, I asked for what was required of my position and did just that the remainder of my time there. Now I've got a better job with fewer responsibilities and better pay, and a boss who doesn't try to gaslight them. Friends in company A tell me how they still haven't shipped any new products since I left 3 months ago, so now they're behind. Multiple people have already left, and the remaining people are looking for new jobs. Anybody else think OP's real mess up here was saying, oh, I like this company, I plan to retire with them in 30 years? You can't trust any company for like 5 years, and how many stories do you hear of people who work at a place that is awesome for 5 or 10 years and then it gets bought out by some corporate, soulless, just wants to extract any profit from it company? Unless you're already at like year 29, I don't think you can ever plan on retiring anywhere. Rev Ragnarok commented, when I left my last company, it was like that. What if we offered you X% more? I said, well, if you thought I was worth that, why aren't you paying me that directly? It's not like that extra money goes into your pocket. Our next story is chicken restaurant, we'll call it Zachsbees, forgot my sauce and then charged me 25 cents each when I went back to get it. Every year, my wife and I put on an employee appreciation day for our small business. I encourage them to bring family, and we rent a large pavilion at a local park. Usually ends up being about 50 people. I usually hire it to be catered, but this year I spent more on the rental location and less on the food. This idea seemed to be preferred, so I pre-ordered via phone Zachsbees. The order total was nearly $300. I got all the way across town and realized there was only 1 bag of sauce. There should have been 2. So I go back and to my surprise, they decided to charge me 25 cents per sauce. I was missing 16. I explained to the cashier and then again to the assistant manager that I had already paid, but the sauce had been forgotten. They demanded that I pay the $4 or kick rocks. So, knowing credit card companies charge a minimum fee to the merchant, I spent the next half an hour buying sauce on my credit card, waiting 3 minutes between each transaction so the charges couldn't be merged. 1 sauce at a time. I got my sauce, and it cost them way more than the sauce price. While I do appreciate the pettiness and the revenge OP kind of ultimately got with this malicious compliance, I just know the cashier or even the assistant manager working at that Zachsbees probably does not care enough about the differential price from the credit card charging fee. That's only going to hurt one person's bottom line, and it's probably not enough to even raise a stink about for them. A bunch of numbers commented, "My card processor charges 3% for credit and 35 cents for debit." It's entirely possible you wasted half an hour to cost them 12 cents. Our next story is the 3-cut minimum. I have always hated mowing the lawn. At the same time, I don't want to be that neighbor, so I do my best to stay on top of the lawn. However, while I started out strong this summer, I had a series of medical issues that left me in a state that mowing was a bit too much than I could handle. Add in a few other excuses on the few remaining times I could mow, the lawn was making me look like I was the neighbor I didn't want to be. I decided I would pay someone to mow for a change, and then pick it back up once it was back under control. My first mistake was when the company I contacted had advertised a one-time cut, but when calling to schedule the service, notified me they have a 3-cut minimum. I should have backed out then. I didn't. The first mower showed up and canceled the mowing, claiming my lawn was 100% over 23 inches, and as such, for excessive height, proceeded to list that they would charge me a 500% markup for the service. The photos were taken of the few higher points in the lawn, all my front yard, with a tape measure you couldn't read the numbers off of. I was annoyed to say the least, and I tried to originally cancel here, but hit with the whole contract bit. So I told them that I would mow it and I would just use them to end the season and take it easy. I actually only mowed the front lawn, and even then, not the whole lawn. Miraculously, 2 weeks later, the mower showed up, did the whole lawn, and somehow didn't see the backyard that I left untouched was a problem. The next mowing day came and went, and no one showed. So I reported it and canceled the mowing through the app. Despite canceling, someone showed up the following day. I'm annoyed and I want out, so I go into the app and try to cancel my service again. It looks like the service was canceled, and I saved screenshots. Then today, I get a message saying that my mower is on the way. Here's the thing, we've had a drought for the last month or so. It's the end of the season, and my lawn hasn't grown even a ½ inch in the last 2 weeks. I am beyond furious at this point. I wait until the guy shows up, I talk to him. He's a great guy. He's a contractor for this booking company, which is what I thought was the case. He tells me that he gets this all the time. He lets me know that he's going to send a message to the company. I felt bad that his time got wasted, but there wasn't much I could do about that. An hour later, I get a message showing I'm rescheduled for tomorrow. I'm done. So I call them up, and after speaking with one agent, I get to the escalation team. He tells me my service is canceled, but I still have one mowing as per the contract. We go back and forth for a bit and he won't budge. I ask him if he would schedule snow removal in the middle of summer, so why should I schedule mowing when it isn't needed? Nothing. I say, fine. Schedule me for June in 2047. June when, sir? June 4th, 2047. I'm sure I'll need my lawn mowed then. We can't schedule that far in advance. He's insistent that it has to be this or next year, but I keep pushing. And I remind him that I agreed to a 3-cut minimum, and nowhere in any conversations did the company specify a restriction on when. So I wanted to schedule it on June 4th, 2047, and he needed to schedule it to happen. One moment, sir, while I talk to support. I wait for another few minutes, and then he comes back. Your service is fully canceled. No one is coming out. I would have been much more impressed if they actually somehow came back and said, okay, your service is scheduled. We'll be sure to send someone out on June 4th, 2047. Zoreb1 commented, it would have been fun seeing someone show up with an anti-grav mower if you lived in the house that long. OP replied, I tell you what, if they do keep that appointment and I'm still around, I'll pay them. Our next story is, want to force me to give out resumes when I already have a job? Fine then. I, 22-year-old male, am the primary caretaker of one of my family members. Among other chronic illnesses, she's a diagnosed narcissist with early dementia. As per my family's request, I moved with her and took an online job as a trilingual translator to ensure that I would be there 24/7 should she have an emergency. Somehow, she's interpreted my constant presence as me not having a job, despite me explaining several times that I did, in fact, work. She went to the point of stealing my ID and debit card, saying that she would not be giving them back to me unless I gave out resumes where she told me to. I've searched the whole house and couldn't find them, so I was forced to comply. I have a huge amount of respect for people who work in these fields, but I'm not taking a job as a cleaner or a cashier when I work in my field of choice. That's when I noticed all the places she was forcing me to send out resumes to were requesting a cover letter. This is where the malicious compliance takes place. I took an already written cover letter and changed some details so it would be like I wrote it myself. I made her read it and approve it as per her request, and then added the following sentences in my second paragraph. If this letter arrives on your desk, please know that this application has been sent without my consent. Already having an online full-time job, please do not take it into consideration. As you can imagine, I didn't get called back much. Only one place sent me an email, and once I explained the situation, their HR team wished me luck with my situation and told me this motivated them to read cover letters more carefully. At the same time, I contacted my boss. I knew they sometimes open in-office positions, and my boss is one of the nicest people I know, so I contacted her and asked if there was any way I could get the next in-office position. Telling her why exactly I was asking that, I've been working there for 6 months and she never had any complaints about me, so she sent me a permanent contract starting in January 2026 for their office. It's overseas, in a country where I'm legally allowed to work without a work visa. I won't specify which country, since I have the intention of disappearing there. My flight's already booked, and only my best friend knows what's going on. I have a letter already written out where I tell my family to not warn the authorities. As soon as I land, my bank account will be closed and my phone subscription canceled, and after 5 years, I will ask to become a citizen in that country and won't renew the paperwork necessary to prove my citizenship in my birth country. I have 3 younger siblings. All of them are still in middle school. They have their own email addresses that our parents don't know about, so I'll send them an email telling them this is not their fault and that they're the only ones in the family who are allowed to contact me. I'll also add that I'll answer to any questions they have once they turn 18. I'm excited. I'm excited to start a new life. I'm excited to get out of this family who has been the source of most of my problems for my whole life. I'm excited to finally escape toxic people in a toxic environment that was destroying my mental health. Only 2 months left, and after 22 long years of waiting, I'll finally be free. All of this because my last straw was forcing me to send out job applications. I remember about 5 or so years ago when I first started really getting into voice acting and when I started reading the Storytime channel, which obviously now is the R. Steven channel, but still, it felt like a bit of a hard task explaining to people around me and to my parents, "Oh, what do you do for a living?" "Oh, I read Reddit stories. I do a narration thing." I would go to a doctor's appointment and they would be trying to make small talk and they'd say, "Oh, so what do you do for work?" What's the best way for me to describe what I do here? I do narration, I read stories, sort of like an audiobook kind of thing, I guess. Sometimes I get comments like, "Oh, have you been in anything that I might have seen or might know?" No, probably not. For people that are just out of the loop or not technologically inclined, an always online job just doesn't register for them. Splasher left a comment saying, "The only issue I have with all of this, does your home country require you to renew citizenship?" Opie replied, "When I say renew citizenship, I mean renewing all the paperwork. ID, passport, healthcare card, required for me to prove I'm a citizen of my birth country. They're valid for 10 years. Mine expire in 8. Our next story is voice recognition farce. I, male, too old to be arsed with messing around, am a first world immigrant to another first world country, and have an accent that voice recognition really struggles with. 11. If you know, you know. For everyone else, search YouTube for the Burniston Lift sketch. All the local banks, including mine, have heavily pushed for customers to use voice recognition. I call the bank about an issue, a very rare occurrence as most of my banking needs are online, and they ask me to enroll with voice recognition. When I stopped laughing, I politely told them that, due to my accent, it doesn't work for me. Note that they had offshored the call center service to the Philippines, so there's another communication issue, as my accent is very difficult for Filipinos too. I call again about a month later, and the bank informs me voice recognition is now mandatory, and I asked, "What if it doesn't work?" The response is, "It always works." Cue my peals of laughter. See my comment 11 above. I asked them how the enrollment works. They responded, just follow the instructions. I ask, still, what if it fails? They say, it won't. The malicious compliance, the bank transfers me to the voice recognition enrollment and it fails spectacularly. I have to hang up and call back. Told them about the failure, but they insist on trying again. I comply, knowing it would fail again. Rinse and repeat. Called back. I told them about the 2 fails. They insist on trying again. My final compliance, it fails again, and I'm about to have a sense of humor failure. I call back again and insist on having my issue dealt with without going through voice recognition. Once again, they wanted me to follow their process. Cue a change in my tone of voice from friendly to authoritative. No raised volume, no shouting, just a change in tone of voice. No, this has failed 3 times in a row. Look at your call records on this account. Either process my request or I escalate and put in a complaint. My wife had worked for them, and I knew that was a huge negative metric that was to be avoided at all costs. The Filipino call center worker passes me to the native English speaker supervisor, who also struggles with my accent. I am perfectly pleasant and explain the 3 failures, and all I wanted was a simple action taken that can't be done online. Success! No complaints required. 18 months later, I call and the bank has added an option to the IVR to bypass voice recognition. The change wasn't down to me, but after speaking to friends who work at the bank, it was rather lots of complaints that it didn't work for certain accents. Here's what annoys me the most. A bank, by design, almost instantly makes hand over fist money. Surely they can afford to have one customer support service line that is just useful. Like, surely the bank doesn't have a bottom line issue that big that they can't afford it. The Aardvark of Lore commented, I have a drawl and a lisp. Voice recognition doesn't. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to hear another absolutely crazy malicious compliance story, check out that video on the left. Or if you missed my latest video, check out that video on the right. That said, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.